You're listening to the VRverse, a virtual reality podcast where two friends talk all things VR. Now, let's join your hosts, the VR Realm and Dr. Oculus.
Hi everyone, welcome to episode 41 of the VRverse. Today I'm joined by game directors from Mighty Eyes, which is Eugene and Ben. How are you both today?
Good, thank you.
Yeah,
Nice to be here.
Yeah, really good, thanks.
It's great to get you on. I know I started the conversations before the game got delayed, and it was like, when it's out, we'll just discuss it. Which was I appreciate when you choose to delay games rather than put out something that's nowhere near finished. So I'm one of those ones. I'm not one of the ones who complain when people delay games. Give us the best product you can, is the way I view it.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I think we kind of feel the same as well. I think trying to get a game out, at a certain date is always tough when you have a deadline, and having to push that is always tough on everyone, including ourselves. It is hard. It's a hard decision to have to push a game out, but and we don't take that lightly. So yeah, it's just one of those things that we had to do a few times. So yeah.
Lessons learned though, for sure. I think in future, I think we'd probably be a little more, conservative around being so hasty about announcing dates. I think just kind of think about how we plan around, making those public relative to the community. But it is a tough one. You get a lot of pressure from a lot of different angles, and it can be difficult for sure.
Yes, I guess you have
balance.
The pressures we don't see on our side of trying to hit release dates. Working in my normal job is very time and date based, so you get people don't understand the pressures that come with it.
I think the tricky thing is game development in any realm is a complicated thing to do, and VR I think adds another layer to that. And then depending on the type of game you're making, obviously you're trying to timeline and schedule and scope these things, and it's enormously complicated. And I'm not going to be the first one to say it's very difficult to accurately predict how long something might take, especially as you start to look at the complexity. And you look at a game like Wanderer. Obviously, it's not a simple game. It just becomes you learn as you go. And obviously, we've got a couple of titles that we've shipped now, and each time we learn a bit more. But it's a bit of a dark art, I think, knowing how to look at a timeline and be like, oh yeah, I think we can get this inside of that. And you see the biggest gaming companies on earth can't nail that. So it's pretty hard for indies.
Yeah, and we were very ambitious with what we planned. So it's balancing this extremely long game with this really physics-based game, and then the time traveling component as well. So there's a lot to kind of to put together, and a lot that can go wrong. Trust me, there was about a billion things that I guess our fans didn't see, which was some pretty interesting bugs prior to launch. But it's a big game with lots going on, so hard to balance.
And to say remembering which items where must be a nightmare to program. Like, I could drop an item in this place, someone else could drop it in this place. There's a lot of testing, I'm guessing, to make sure. So that's interesting.
That thing is one of the more complicated parts of the original title and this title. And with this title versus the old title, it's quite interesting. This time round, everything's persistent all the time, everywhere. So that doesn't just mean where you left an item. That also means the state the item should be in. Mm-hmm. If it's a door, the constraint that the door was left on, the physics constraint. That means NPCs, what state were they in when you left? Combat, what state were NPCs in relative to combat when you left that era. The whole raft of things like that. It's just like, trying to basically create this persistent serialization of all this data, and then having to say that actually has created other problems too, which is that our save game files are massive, because we're just saving so much data, and that's actually been a problem at launch, which we've literally just been fixing the last couple of weeks, and hoping to get that into patch 1.
I mean, there's so much data that we've had to basically compress it all down to a manageable size. It's insane that every little aspect of the game that you can interact with is savable. It needs to have a state, and that state needs to maintain itself when you come back to that era. It's definitely no small feat by any means. And then, as Ben saying, like trying to read and write all that data in as you're loading a scene and as you're interacting with the world is quite big as well. So like we said, we were quite ambitious with what we planned, and managed to pull it off, but only just. I mean, it's good in a sense, because it means that we can kind of, now that we've done it, we've got something that we can continue to evolve, which is nice.
And the cool thing is those updates coming will add a lot more. I know people have been asking for chapter saves and certain things, and because our save games have been so big, we've been a bit hamstrung around like what we can offer. We've had some cloud save issues relative to quest saving stuff. So we've managed to compress our save games down considerably. The final stages are working through that, and so that'll give a lot more options, hopefully, with patch 1 coming out soon. It'll be good to see that go live and improve things for players.
So what I haven't fought with the original, and obviously you've just expanded on the original with Fragment of Fates. Is the actual ambition behind the game, especially coming from, like you said, an indie developer, like it's a lot of work. Even with the original, did you would have learned a lot from that? But was any like issues
Yeah, for sure. I just want to touch on one other thing, because I don't know if anyone would have ever noticed this. So with that persistent system that we're talking about, the save game system, there's actually a thing we built that's very different to the first game in Fragments of Fate. There's only one level that has the same footprint in regards to where you can access when you're accessing the different periods in time, and that's the German level. And the cool thing you can do with that level, a little bit of a spoiler here, so block your ears if you don't want to hear, but you can leave anything in the earlier era and it will transition to the later era. And there'll be the state of things as well. So we actually built quite a complicated persistent system that can take the time at which something was stamped and then track that through to other timelines. Anyway, getting a bit sidetracked there, but it's something that most players wouldn't notice, because it's kind of like you don't necessarily have to know that that's happening to kind of play through the game and that kind of thing. But it was a cool little technical feat. Sorry,
maybe something that
just thought I'd mention that.
Maybe something that we might use in the future as well, a little bit more of, because
100%.
we wanted to do a lot more of that in the first one. But since the level's already planned and laid out, it wasn't too much time to iterate on that. So maybe in the future it's something that we do a little bit more of.
Yeah, and it's a cool design concept if you think about it, that you can move something here and it would move it in the future. But so I think for moving forward, I think there's some cool ideas with the system we have built already there that we can start to expand on as well. So go back to your question relative to Wanderer original. That was our first real big kind of dive in the deep end of like VR development. I mean, we'd built a small 20-minute prototype back in 2018, I think, and then diving into proper planning systems, building out levels, design, all that stuff. It was a heck of a steep learning curve for us, and we've been working in VR for a while, but not to the degree at which I think we're trying to push the envelope that much. And then the same this time round, it probably more difficult actually. I think for us this time we tried to give the player a lot more agency. What I don't think what we underestimated was that giving the player this much more agency, there was not a straight line relative to scope. It was actually so we gave the player the ability to swim and climb and run around, jump, all that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden it's like, holy heck, got to keep the player confined and keep their wayfinding like decent. How do we like redesign our levels to work within those new paradigms? It was like quite a lot more to chew off.
Yeah. And even more so when it came to interacting with characters as well, like on the combat side, having there's an infinite way that players can approach a character and interact with them and choose to I guess attack a character. So there's a lot to think about there, and a lot of the combat just evolved and evolved and evolved and evolved into the point where it was huge. So we had the ability to to have unarmed and then melee combat and range combat and short range and long range, and it just grew and grew and grew as we sort of unraveled what we needed for each of the scenes, and now it's quite a decent system.
And I think that the tricky thing there, actually, from the first game to the second game, is that the first game had very little combat in it, and we knew when we made the first game, we wanted there to be a cool balance of combat and adventure. We couldn't quite pull that off in the first game, because the whole concept of being able to take anything I want from any other era to another era and use that how I want to use it, always just felt like a really awesome, kernel or like pillar of what Wanderer is. And for us, I think like kind of usual saying, the combat systems for us, that was probably the biggest unknown going into the Fragments of Fate, and the thing we probably struggled with the most. I think like VR combat is difficult especially when it comes to melee. You have an infinite input, a range of variables relative to what the player can technically do to another NPC. Something we're still working through to a large degree. Like, how do we improve that? We know it's probably the weakest part of the game. And so for us, it's been a huge focus of a lot of this year, but I say probably a really large focus relative to one of our primary goals over the last 2 months. And we are making improvements to it that are coming with patches. So we hope the community will take a chance and check them out and give us some feedback, whether it's good or bad. And but I am confident it is definitely heading in the right trajectory. Whether or not it'll get to the point where kind of the rest of the game is at, we don't know. But it's certainly improving.
I always feel a bit bad for developers and things, because you probably hear 90% bad. People who enjoy it don't normally, unless you're like myself, like I review games. I'll enjoy a game, I'll put it out and say how much I enjoyed it. But on the player side, you probably just hear a lot of the negative.
I think people. I mean, people are right to complain if something is really bad. Like, for instance, if something, I think you've got to take the good with the bad, and you are right in the sense that when something's good, I think a lot of people that they just play it and they're like, that was great, and they may not never talk about that publicly or post anything about it. If something's phenomenal, then people might, they'll might, wave a flag for it somewhere. Who knows?
Might say something.
But I think depending on certain negative traits, that is where people tend to be more vocal, and that's just part of what you have to deal with as a game developer. And I think if you're not up for that, then you probably shouldn't be making games, because I think that just comes with the territory. And for us, I think, well, Eugene and myself, I think our backgrounds we're pretty thick-skinned. We can take most of it.
Yeah. I guess when you've worked in agency land for a while, you definitely grow a thick skin. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the tricky thing actually becomes is trying to like understand the feedback in a way where you can take constructive direction from it.
Yeah.
So like that's the difficult part I find is, you get all this wide array of different feedback, and then you're kind of trying to figure out, okay, well, they didn't like this thing, but what did they really mean there, and how could we do something to actually combat that?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a big part of what the patching process is for us,
Yeah.
is trying to like delineate the key things we think will have the biggest impact relative to people's pain points, complaints. Some bugs are black and white. It's easy. A crash, someone's blocked at this point. Those are things we just got to fix.
Yeah.
And it's something with a game like Wanderer is complicated for us to QA. Some of those 1 in 100 players, 1 in 1,000 players might get it. Can take us like 3 days to replicate it in the studio, and it's just like one of 100 of those types of bugs. But yeah, we are doing our best to keep grinding, and each patch will drastically improve the game relative to those general things.
So you're being very transparent with when you're looking to aim to fix stuff with you, because you put your roadmap out maybe 1 or 2 days after the game come out.
Absolutely.
So we've got a patch coming by the end of the month, and generally what's in that roadmap is what's in that patch. Obviously, we'll detail that patch when it goes live. We might even do a little bit of a video just explaining some of the key things, so it's really clear for players like what has changed, what hasn't been updated yet, what key bugs are fixed, and what new features are coming. We've got some pretty cool features coming in this one. One in particular, I think that certain types of players will really love. Which we can talk more today about.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Ben, how much we haven't talked about this, but how much do we want to talk
I
about
think
this?
We can share. I don't think there's any harm. So, this is an interesting thing with the game. You will have played it, again, spoilers for anyone listening here. The base world that you play from, your kind of sanctuary, changes multiple times as you change time. And even in the first game, we had a bit of, tension relative to like, how do we handle that transition with all the stuff you've put in it? You can put, you might just have 10 things in there, or you might have like 50 items in there, just depending on how you play the game. But the current Fragments of Fate system that's live at the moment just does some kind of doesn't really do anything too fancy. It just basically tries to find a spot near where you've left the item to like place it. The problem with that is if you've got like 20 items sitting on top of each other, when you do that transition, they'll often end up with some kind of jank somewhere where an item will be clipping or pop or fly around. It's like very difficult.
Classic case of this that was kind of the straw on the camel's back for us to create the system. We're like, right, that's it. Is one of the homes that you go back to has got a big hole in the wall, and we found that some people were stacking up all of their items near that hole in the wall, and once it transitioned, near the sort of big front window, which then becomes a big hole in the wall. And what would happen is during that transition, those items would basically explode and then go flying outside of the hole in the wall. So we couldn't control that. So we thought, there's got to be a better way for us to do this. And in our old system, in the previous game, we had actually tidied up the apartment as you transition. And we thought, let's bring back the tidying up of that transition. But then we kind of went one step further, which
So we actually looked at it from quite a few angles because this is really complicated. But what we ended up doing is we've created this new feature which we call an Echo Vault. So in the game, you obviously get the Echo Diviner. You can use that to, if you've lost an item, you can find its origin point, scan it, and bring it back. So what we've done is basically we've created this hybrid system where anything that exists in your base home sanctuary, as you transition to the different version of it in the timeline, will go into these Echo Vaults, and each Echo Vault has an outline for key items, and I think there's 4 of them kind of around the sanctuary, and they're organized into like weapons, RC car stuff, tools, and a few other bits and bobs. And the cool thing you can do with this is, so first of all, it'll tidy your stuff up, put it into the slots if you already have it in your home. And what it will do is if you during that transition, or if you've got a slot that you didn't have anything in home, you go find an axe in another map and there's a slot on the wall for the axe, you put it in, a little light will flash to green, and the echo point for that object will update to that vault. And so the cool thing is you can build out your entire home base and fill up these echo vaults, and essentially your echo origins will update to those points too. So it just means that you'll be able to keep track of your stuff better and actually kind of collect it and then use it in a way that you can keep coming back and create an arsenal, an armory, have your tools and all that kind of stuff as well. So and the other cool thing is it uses the additional systems as fallback for weird edge case items that you might have brought back that don't deserve to have a slot. Like if you bought like a cog back for some reason and left it on the floor, it's probably not key that has its own slot versus something like a pistol or something like that.
Because that's always been a core problem with some of the people playing it, is that it is hard to keep track of where you've put everything. A lot of the time it is kind of down to people's memory of where did I place that so and so. And I think this is just another way that we can help solve that pain point for people playing. So that there's a home for it, which is kind of well overdue, I think.
Yeah. And it feels cool to start just filling out your armory with all the stuff and filling out your tools and all that kind of stuff too.
Looks really cool. Looks amazing, actually. Just with everything filled in place.
Like when I was playing the new one, the first one, I just sort of some stuff around the house, and then when I was playing Fragment of Fates, I was like, I'll put the fishing rod, looks like it would be good on the shelf, and I was just like going around and putting stuff where I knew I'd left them, like fishing rod will go on the shelf.
There's a few places where people would put stuff. I think kitchen bench was always one of them. On the bed, on the mat, the big round mat where that big window was, would be a place where people would put them. One of our testers actually would use all of the kitchen bench area to place all of the weapons. He was really particular about like placing all the weapons.
And he would collect everything. Ammo, weapons. That kitchen bench would be like, there'd be like 50 items on it, and then you'd transition, and it would be chaos.
We loved his saves actually, because you just knew that you'd have everything you needed when you loaded into one of the saves. Any gun you wanted, it was just there on the kitchen bench. You didn't have to ask; you just knew exactly where it was. Great.
So one big change in the new one, I know it's a cause of a lot of jank in VR. So I just wondered, like the challenges of putting a full body, in it. Like you look at the likes of Boneworks and things like that. The devs still not figured it out, and that's been their thing for physics wise and stuff.
Yep, incredibly difficult. That's what I was talking about, that kind of giving the player more agency, giving them an avatar. It's not a straight line relative to scope. So the interesting thing is when you make a physics-driven game where everything's physics-driven, you can't really fake it much anywhere along the chain. it's really got to start at the player character, and everything up from there has to be built upon with physics. You can't have as soon as you take a chain out, a kink out of that chain, link out of that chain, it starts to fall apart, or you start to make compromises that make things difficult. And in the original game, we kind of did it. It was a bit of that. It was a bit of a hybrid system, and we had to work around certain things and fake certain things relative to physics. And you can make it work, but it's difficult. On the flip side, when everything's physics driven, you're relying on physics for core gameplay experiences, whether that's movement, combat, whatever, and that is a huge challenge. It's like you said, it's something I think the VR industry as a whole is only just starting to really kind of. We're at the tip of the iceberg, I think, of like where this can go and how difficult it is, and the creating kind of concepts and frameworks that actually can explore this with, in ways that give better experiences to players and stuff. And I think overall we're pretty happy with the general physics system that we've built. Has its quirks. It's still got some stuff we'd love to iron out. There's still some core things that could definitely be better. And we've got some fixes coming in patch 1 that'll help with those as too. But sorry,
I think it'll only get better though. Like you said, Ben. Physics is kind of underutilized, and it's something that can make VR feel amazing, but it really needs the time spent on it, and we put so much time into the physical nature of everything in the game. And it's still not 100% there yet. There's still some jank here and there, but probably the biggest thing that will make physics feel better in the future is as the frame rates get higher. So as the frame rates get higher, those physics interactions will feel more real because they're not intersecting items and then sort of bouncing out of them, which is where a lot of the physics stuff jank comes from. Is when there's not enough frames for it to detect a hit, and it's already too far into that item, so then it just bounces out. So I think in a few years, I think a lot more titles will be using much more physics. We
actually substep our physics, which probably most games do, but we substep it, we double it on PSVR. So PSVR runs at 90 frames per second. We're running our physics at 180 frames per second, essentially. And on Quest, we substep at 3x. So I think on Quest 3 we run at 45 with the asynchronous space warp, so that's running 45 times 3, which is 135. So that's and that's what we have to do, that amount of substepping, which comes at a cost to CPU to get even the accuracy that we have got. So I mean it is a cool challenge though. I think when you start to dig into it, it's a very kind of addictive thing, because you start to realize how much of, if you build everything out like that, you can start to things will just start to click and work relative to the things you can do as a person in that VR world versus if you're not physics driven. And so, there's as much of it can bring massive headaches, but it can be really kind of empowering as well. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, to be honest. And I know that I think some people are like, they see the physics-driven stuff, they see the player-driven stuff, and they think, "Oh God, another one of these games coming out." But I think it's only going to get better. And like I said, generally speaking, I was pretty damn happy with a lot of our physics-driven systems. I think some of the core stuff, especially like some of our socketing systems and the way grabbing works and stuff, I think, and that's all physics-driven. That was personally I think is feeling really smooth and yeah, decent. Player avatar movement generally pretty good. We've still got a few ghosts in that system though. But yeah, yep, it's always a moving target, and we're always trying to push it. Yep.
And also, just on the same subject with the physics and socketing, sometimes you just have to help the player out. So, like with socketing, we actually built a system where we use magnets and rails. So, like in real life, you can put a lid on a bottle easily enough, but in VR, it seems way harder. So, we actually made a rail system so that it would actually help the player get that item onto the spot that they needed with a little bit of help. And it kind of just felt really nice and natural. So you could do things really quickly, and then suddenly everything just kind of gelled.
Yeah.
Before that, when it was just pure physics, it was incredibly difficult. So you kind of do need to do things like that.
It is still pure physics. So the cool thing with this system is, if anyone's going to go find a pen lid, or I think there's some bottles with like laundry bottles with lids. Go experiment with those, and you'll see the system in action. It's kind of cool. It creates a dynamic physics constraint in runtime as you're using it. That actually will create a physics force that pulls your hand towards the target. You can put it on a rail or like a constraint that essentially is so strong that your hand can't really move off it, and then click it on. And yeah, but that system alone took us, I don't know, the better part of probably like 6 months to develop.
Easily, and we tweaked it for about 2 years.
Yeah. But I mean, the cool thing is that you can start to use that everywhere. You use that for loading magazines, and you use that for, puzzles and socketing items in, and, whatever. But it takes a long time to get that right, and to do it with physics is difficult too. But the developers did an awesome job on that system. So hats off to them.
Definitely, like I said, it must feel natural, because I didn't think anything was wrong with it.
Yeah, well,
like
we always say, like, when something is working, it should almost be invisible.
Yeah.
Like, you would just go about your business and play the game, and you wouldn't really be thinking about it. You're just doing what you should intuitively feel is right or natural. And so, like, the best systems and designs are almost invisible. They're just there, guiding you, helping you, and you're just, because you are the input. So it should just feel like what you are implying and to do just happens. Yep.
Yeah, so that's one thing. If you think the difficulty you face as a VR developer outside of a flat screen is that person's doing it, so it feels unnatural to you doing it in VR. You notice it a lot more.
Yep.
If it feels or looks unnatural, the players notice it more.
100%. Yeah. And it is a tricky one, because I mean, we didn't have to build that entire socketing system. We could have just done what a lot of games do and just snap the item to the socket.
Yeah.
That would suffice for 9 out of 10 games, and maybe we'll look back on that and go, maybe we shouldn't have. Maybe we should have just. But I don't know. For us, it's we're always trying to push
the boundaries, basically.
Push the boundaries. Yeah.
Yeah, it is funny though. Like when I play other games now, and my hand clips through things, or I grab an object and it clips through things, or it doesn't have the same socketing system as ours.
Yeah,
it snaps into place. So it's like, ooh, that doesn't feel good. So I'm quite picky now when it comes to that stuff. Like I get over it, but I definitely prefer when there's more physicalized, game mechanics in a VR title.
So what made the team decide to go for virtual reality?
That's a good question. That's actually a bit of we've got to rewind the clock quite far on that one. So Eugene actually backed the original Oculus in 2013, 14 or something like that. I don't know.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and then I actually used to work for Huge for his other company many moons ago, and me and him would mess around with that original Oculus back in the day, and just kind of it's just crazy thinking back to it and just putting that headset on, and that was mind blowing. Like 10 years ago, it was like holy heck, like, and then.
And immediately we were like, God, we got to do something with this
we got to
thing.
do
We got to
something.
do something. Yeah.
But it took us 5 years to. We did some small experiments and things like that, and we made a prototype. And so I guess 3 years later we were making a prototype, and then 2019 I think we started full production. So kind of like 4 or 5 years after. But that was definitely the seed, which I think it was for a lot of people that got into VR. Was the kind of the spark for whatever the industry has become now. Yep.
Yeah, and I think both of us, storytellers, and I think one medium that you can really get people immersed in stories is VR. There's no other medium like it. It's just fully immersive. You can be in that world. You can be that person.
Yeah.
So I think that's what drew us to it in the first place.
And actually,
and that's why we push the boundaries, because we want to be able to push the technology as far as it can go, really.
And that's a really good point to throw coming back around to the avatar thing. Why the heck do we put avatars in Fragments of Fate? That's because it's just a key part of the storytelling. You essentially are becoming different people as you travel through time. How do we show who you're becoming? Well, the best way we can do that is give you an avatar, throw some mirrors into some levels, and all of a sudden you can see who you are, and you can start to feel like you're someone else in a different story with different objectives and different motives. And as you start to play the game, it's about the excitement of becoming these different people, and who am I going to be next, and what is that going to feel like? And obviously on the moon, we can actually change the parameters of how each player avatar can move and how strong they are and those kind of things as well. So
those, like the mirrors, just I always think a lot of, especially in the VR space, a lot of games miss putting reflection in mirrors, and there's nothing more immersion breaking when you go into a room, look in the mirror, and it's just a blurry version of the background behind you, and you're like, where am I? And so every mirror you come across in this game, you stand and wave at it. I played it on PlayStation VR 2. I was shocked to see the eye tracking in there, because not many people actually bother to use that. But outside of the benefits of how reduce use of power and stuff.
I will say,
as soon as we did the mirrors, we were like, okay, we need to put eye tracking. Like, this is the reason that eye tracking exists, is so that we can see, what our character's looking like. And I think the next level would be like multiplayer and them seeing and your eyes moving and stuff. But that was big for us. As soon as we put mirrors in, we were like, immediately, we have to have eye tracking. It's just a no-brainer.
And I think it is interesting you say that, lots of games don't, you go up to a mirror and there's nothing there. I think for us, maybe we're in a fortunate position where the mirrors aren't just a novelty factor; they're a big core part of the game, like seeing who you become. So it was easier for us to justify the time taken to actually put those mirrors in, because it was not easy to get those running on Quest with the full metahuman player avatar, all that kind of jazz. It took some serious heavy lifting to get those running. So so I don't want to diss other developers, because it's just not something you would take lightly. And for us, there was a very good reason to do it. I think if we didn't have that reason, we probably wouldn't have done it. To be fair,
yeah, absolutely. And we didn't do it in the first one, obviously, because we just had hands, and there's just no point. But a big part of part two was actually, well, not part two, with the remake, was embodying that person and being able to show it. So mirrors and avatars, they were a must for us.
And there's a heck of a lot of learning. And I will say, anyone listening, patch 1 has got a much needed fix relative to getting your avatar a bit more streamlined to your size relative to knee bend and those kind of things. So, and crouching and a few bits and bobs. So, sorry it's taken so long to get that in there, but it is coming.
One thing I was happy seeing is in the remake, just makes, again, we've talked about your home and the inventory management, is having the fragments on the actual arm, on the wrist, rather than having to go and collect them every time you wanted to move. I just thought that was a really good touch, because it was one of my, it wasn't an issue, but it was like one of my things, like, oh, I need to go there, but now I need to go back home to go and get the other one I need to go there. And
yeah, so we read some really good reviews of the original game, and early on in pre-production for Fragments of Fate, we wrote some lists of like the key problems I think that like people had, and one of the key pain points, I remember reading the review by whoever it was. This person was so frustrated. They were like, it's so annoying that I have to keep going back through my base wheel just to, if I leave something somewhere, I'm like, God damn it, that's like 2 time travel warps I've got to do. So we were like, the original game was built in a way that we couldn't have added that feature easily, even if we wanted to. The save systems and stuff required you to pass through home to function properly, and a lot of the recovery management did. So it's a lot of reworking there for the remake, for that to be able to happen. And then we thought, well, what's interesting is actually not giving that to the players straight away, so that they understand the frustration of having to go through the base world just for a little bit. Just for a little bit, not too long. Maybe, I think just it's like an hour or so.
Tiny
yeah.
Pain.
Yeah. And you do have to do one in particular puzzle that requires you to go back through home a few times before you unlock all that. And then, so that by the time you unlock that, you actually are like, this is awesome. Like, thank God I have this now. I don't ever want to go back to playing how I did. So, yeah, a definite. That was from very early on in pre-production. We knew that was something we were going to do. The trickier thing actually was figuring out how we were going to give you the fragments. We went through so many iterations of, because you obviously have multiple inventory kind of things happening in the game, and so you've got your general inventory, you've got hammer space on your shoulders, that kind of thing. We were like, well, this has to be a separate thing to that. And ironically, the wrist strap that we give you, for anyone that hasn't played, essentially what we do is we give you your items on your wrist, and we over-rotate a band of items so that your wrist might be able to rotate, let's say, like 110 degrees or something. I don't know. No more than that. No, it would be like maybe 170 degrees, maybe. Yeah, 180 to squeeze. And so what we do is we over-rotate the band so that you can access all of those items really easily. And it's actually a pretty novel way of handling like what is essentially an inventory of stuff. And yeah, it's something we want to explore more in the future too, because that's just one wrist. So you could have 2 wrists of stuff happening there. And I think we've got 12 items on one wrist, which is actually a lot of stuff relative to inventory that's very easy to access. So that was a very unintuitive solution to a problem that I can't even tell you where that solution came from. Someone in the studio.
I think it was inspired by the iPod, really. The whole iPod wheel. It was basically an iPod wheel on your wrist. It's like, I wonder if we did an iPod wheel, it would feel good. And it kind of worked out. I think we had started off with like 4 maybe on each side, and we tried that, and we're like, oh. And then to fit all of them on, we were like, okay, well, they kind of need to grow and shrink as you kind of rotate, or as you go to grab them. So we did some iterations, and then what we ended up with felt pretty good, pretty quick to grab an item and throw it into your watch.
Yeah, we had some
Yeah.
shockers before that though. I remember we had these things that would come up in front of you. You would like swipe through them with your finger, and they were
We had
just
one that
not
surrounded the
good.
player as well, like a big ring.
Yeah, they were just not
it
good.
was horrific. Yeah.
But yeah, I think someone came up with the idea. Because we were just sick of like swiping and buttons and stuff. We were like, what else do we have that the player can do that's like not hard or like finicky for them to actually operate? And we were like, well, they can turn their wrists, and I think it just came from that somehow. We're like, that's an easy
And I
thing
think
to
originally,
do. Yeah.
I think originally we had already devved the ripcord, right, for going home.
Yes, we
I
had.
think we had.
Yeah.
So we had the
had,
ripcord
yeah.
already. So we're like, okay, it kind of makes sense that like we have, everything on this wrist, and with the ability to get home using ripcord. We're like, okay, well, maybe on your wrist would be a good idea.
I remember what we had. We had another thing was that we had all the items in like a line that you would swipe through on here.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And that was terrible as well. That was not good. So that was a real iterative, that one, a real iterative solution. Yeah.
I mean,
a lot of our concepts go through maybe 3 stages, generally 3 stages of like iteration, but this one took a lot longer. And I think in general, sometimes the more iteration you go through, it generally ends up being better and better because you just keep, making it refined and refined and refined.
Yeah, I think there's not again with virtual reality. There's not much worse than a like intrusive inventory system. Like you said, so you don't really want a big thing popping up in front of you. I think a lot of devs sort of take the easy route with backpacks now because never mind what it's in, because it's easy to manage, easy to hide, easy to get from over your shoulder. I thought that one was really good. Like you said, it's just it just becomes second nature. Once you've got done it, you're just like, oh yeah, I'll pull this, grab this, let go, and on we goes.
And again, just going back to that design ethos of like, you shouldn't really be thinking about it too much. It should just start to become like a rhythm, and it should just be invisible. You just start using, your intentions are just to use it how you want to, and then it just fades into the background of gameplay, and you're just thinking about what you're doing next and your objectives rather than how to operate this damn thing that I'm trying to use or whatever. Yeah. Easier said than done though. Yeah.
What made you decide to revisit the verse and give it this uplift? I know there's more to it. There's a lot more to it, like gameplay wise. There's more to it in the levels and stuff. What made you just think we want to revisit that one rather than just go straight on to the next?
The second.
Yeah. That's a good question. I think it's a tricky one. I think the first game was built in a way that we ended up with a game, but not many versatile systems and frameworks that we could leverage as a studio moving forward, if that makes sense, like relative to like just general gameplay, general VR foundations for building anything, any kind of game. So we were kind of thinking, well, longer term, we need to build some more sustainable products internally that we can use that are, are really stable and provide, really good experiences for players, and that, any game we build is built with these, and so players can come to expect the same kind of feel and general level of quality from those systems. And so, the idea was to basically take the original game and kind of, for lack of a better word, modernize it further for the new VR systems coming out. and build some of these new systems and execute those onto the game, and then obviously onto its sequel. So, but I think the thing we underestimated, well, we planned this out, and the systems kind of got away on us a bit, and due to two parts. I think first part would be the complexity of some of them. It was much more complicated than we probably initially thought. And the second thing is we were only going to kind of build half the systems for Fragments of Fate and then build the other half for Wanderer 2.
Mm-hmm.
We basically built them all for Fragments of Fate. So
yeah, pretty much. Most of them are built out now, so which is a good thing, really, because going into the next one, we've got a whole suite of systems that are pretty solid. I mean, there's still some things like obviously combat we're still working through and making better, and a few bits and pieces that we're making better. But yeah, we have a suite of products or systems now that we can leverage, and it's much faster. I guess also on top of what Ben was saying, our old systems were in UE4. I think we made the decision early on that we would go to 5. But 5 was pretty new at the time, so there was a lot of time spent wrangling the engine, a brand new engine to work for us, and it wasn't. A lot of the VR systems in that engine hadn't really been ported across like amazingly, so a lot of time was spent, refining that and working on core engine systems too. A lot of that's now pretty stable. Which is great. But it wasn't easy, that's for sure. There was a lot of work involved. Low end engine code that we had to change. Lots of stuff that didn't work on all platforms and things to kind of wrangle. But with those new systems and with a really much more stable engine, we're in a much better spot to be able to just make content now, and that's kind of one of the reasons why we decided to do the remake. Is we wanted to focus on all of the hard problems, and then once we ironed out all those, then we could create new stories on top of that cool system. So we're in that spot now, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose you've got your physics system, you've got this all ready for the second, and also you're going to feel as players go into the second, they're not going to feel out of depth because they already know basically how the systems work. If to say you release the second one, I'll go back and play the original before the second one.
Yep.
And then I go in the second one,
and
feel foreign.
The same. Yeah, exactly. And then that's the other thing is we wanted. I guess we talked about like the types of products we're making and the IP we're kind of trying to build out here, and we're like, we want the same core feeling to be prevalent on all new VR, mainstream VR devices, and the game should feel the same quality with the same kind of core game loops and themes and general mechanics, etc. So I mean the cool thing is it's with the systems now, it's so we can just spin up prototypes so quickly for all sorts of stuff. Like we just had like one of our devs was just like toying away, just built like a little Call of Duty Zombies kind of like little thing in his spare time, just with our systems, and it was just working. And so
for
like
about four Friday nights, I think the team was like, it'd be really cool if we had a bowling alley in the studio, so we just built a virtual one. It's a full-on bowling alley that you can play, all physicalized, works beautifully.
Yeah. And so the cool thing is with you start, you can't take these systems lightly, like the socketing, the player avatar, the mobility systems like the climbing, the swimming, all of that kind of stuff. once you start to get it functional together as a unit, like the integration is very difficult as well of those systems. You start to be like, holy heck, we could just build that like quite easily now relative to where we were 2, 3, 4 years ago. So it's really empowering for us to think about like the types of things we can do moving forward.
Glad you put the swimming system in, because there's been some games recently where you just use the analogs. I know you've got the option to use analogs.
Yep.
I like the option to actually be doing the motions myself.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I feel like you're missing a trick there if you put swimming in your game and you're not using arms. I mean, that's like why is it a VR game? It should be flat screen at that point. Yeah.
First thing I ever do when I land in water and go in the water on a VR game is flap my arms and see am I moving. Like am I moving?
Yeah.
I go to the top, I
Yeah.
put my hands down. If it doesn't, I'm always like, oh, like
And I think that's interesting. Sorry, Kish.
Oh no, go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that's an interesting thing, and something we're still learning too, is that, especially with VR, every moment can be a moment that can either disappoint or create a moment of like joy for the player. I mean, that's in general gaming too, but I think in VR, because you are trying to make the player as present in that world as possible, you've got to decide which moments, from a scope perspective, if you're going to put swimming in the game, you've got to make sure swimming's actually going to be, move your arms and actually swimming. Otherwise, that just creates a moment of disappointment and frustration. So that's something we've been learning a bit too, I think, with the scope of Wanderer. There's so many interactables, there's so much stuff in it. It's actually very difficult to balance those ideas of like, if we put this in the game and it doesn't do what the players expect it to, then that's a moment we're disappointing the player. So, that's a good learning curve for us actually. Just thinking.
There's one specific one that we kind of added last minute actually, and that was edible items in the game. So we put in cupcakes and apples and a few other
bananas and
food related, bananas and just food related items. And I mean, the first thing people do is they just pick them up and want to eat them, like for no reason, just straight in the mouth, just like a baby does, grabs anything, puts straight in the mouth. And I mean, just that expectation of being able to eat food, I think, is if you don't give it to them, then you're missing a trick. So it was either we took them out or we actually added that in. So we decided to just add that in at the 11th hour. Just okay, we'll make it so you can eat these things. And it actually works really well, and it just means that we can do more of that sort of stuff in the future. Maybe even tie it into a game mechanic as well.
But the annoying thing there is like, not that hard to build an edible system, but of course with Wanderer you have to make that all work with our persistent recovery. So eat a bite and put it there, and then leave and come back. If you destroy it by eating it, is it gone? Can you eco-divine it? All of those things. So it adds like layers of stuff we have to think about relative to like introducing that as a feature. But anyway, we did it. There's still one key thing that's missing, is that cake at the start of the game. You can't do anything worse, but we've got it on the back burner. There's a few things we might do for that, but we'll see.
That's on the mega wish list on the patches. Being able to cut a slice of cake and pick it up and eat it would be kind of nice. As well as blowing out those candles.
Everyone I watched playing it when they were streaming it, as soon as they get in that first room, it's like, eat a cake, can I pop this, can I knock the balloon, can I pull this party pull this party popper thing? Everyone just seems to do exactly the same thing. Like everyone's like, cake, balloon.
I think one of the only systems that isn't persistent right now, which would be nice to do in the future, is the chalkboard and the whiteboards in the game.
Yes.
They're not persistent, which was quite difficult for us to actually to do that, and we just weighed up whether or not it was worth it or not. But a lot of time for that system, so we just put it on the back burner. But yeah, that's probably, I think, maybe one of the only things that isn't persistent through the game is the chalkboard. Yeah, it would be nice to do in the future at some point.
Some of the designers, probably myself included, have very much wanted that at certain points so that we could pre-draw things on whiteboard, give players clues and that kind of thing, or allow you to actually track your progress, with certain puzzles on if you warp and come out rather than a wipe itself. But not impossible, but it is a fairly extensive job to make that work. So we, like you said, that has been on the back burner, that one.
There's been a lot of learning along the way.
Oh yeah.
This, and you're doing stuff with like never seen before, like you said, the time traveling. Now we tell obviously you've made the items distant and stuff in what the state they're in and stuff. Added on to that, it was amazing in the first game. Like you didn't really think about it. How much work goes behind, I don't think. When you're as a player,
no, but yeah, it's just, I think, is one of those things where that's what you would naturally expect to happen, and that when you're playing, we don't want you to think about it.
Yeah,
it should just be part of it. And so again, just going back to the best designers Invisible, it's like, that probably has taken us years to develop that system, but when it's working, players shouldn't be thinking about it. They should just be playing and enjoying the time travel and thinking about the challenges that gives them from a puzzle or combat or objective based perspective. Yeah,
I personally love them both. There's reviews on my website for both of them. If you listen to this, VRrealm.com, a review for both of them. The first and the, I'd obviously recommend going with the Fragment of Fate because it's an updated version. And at the moment, it's available.
Yeah, it looks
on PlayStation and Quest at the moment, isn't it? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Yep. So it's just out on PSVR 2 and Quest 2, Quest 3. It is coming to PC VR very soon. We'll announce more on that soon. But I think for us, really, from a priorities perspective, actually I can probably say a couple of things. Firstly, I think for us, our first priority is the patches and getting those out for players relative to the existing platforms. So that's Quest and PlayStation, and ensuring that existing players and players coming to those platforms have the best possible experience. And we don't want to bring, Steam PCVR out if we know there's still stuff that's being patched that makes the game considerably better. So for us, that's probably our key MO, and we think that's probably the most authentic thing we can do relative to the PCVR community. I think it would be disingenuous for us to just bring it out tomorrow and then, all those players, can have an even better experience relative to having the couple of patches in there. So that's the thinking there. And we will also be bringing it to Pico, the Pico headset as well. Again, I don't have exact dates for that at the moment, but it's all just part of this process we're going through at the moment with the patches and trying to get the best possible version to as many players as we can, and then bringing it out to those platforms and ensuring players are having the best possible experience they can on wherever they're playing it. Yep.
And do you have any closing messages? Anything you want to add? Feel free to add anything. I'm not.
Like I just said, we've got patch 1 coming very soon. It's got some really cool stuff relative to the Echo Vaults when your home transitions. It's got combat updates. It's got lots of bug fixes, lots of crash fixes. It's got a few performance enhancements. It's got a newly revamped trip effect, a bit of a spoiler, sorry. And rafts of other things which we'll list. But yeah, that's coming by the end of the month. And then we'll be on to patch 2, which is outlined in our roadmap. And we will have news very, very, very soon on a bit more around PCVR and Pico. So yeah, I can't share any of that yet, but rest assured, people wanting to play on PCVR, you won't have too long to wait. So please be patient, and we're doing our best to give you the best game we can. Yep.
Thank you, and thank you for taking time out of the day to join me. Really appreciated. I know it's getting late for you over there. It's starting the year for me, so
Oh, good.
I really appreciate it. And make sure to go and check them out on Quest and PlayStation VR at the moment.
Yep.
They have those. Thank you very much again, and we will be back next month. Bye.